Welcome back to Prospect Analytics. As of recording this, we are officially 1 week and 1 day since the release of 2026 Bowman baseball. Now, when we get 1 week after the release of any Bowman product, that's kind of when I start to do my deep dive. I start looking at singles pricing, and Bowman's one of the trickiest releases of the three compared to Chrome and Draft because it's the only one that releases during the season. So some of these players get hot. They've stayed hot during the first week of the release and have seen their autograph prices go through the roof. So I'm going to look at those average base autographs through the first week, compare it to what we saw in the pricing from 2025 Bowman and what those guys were selling like after 1 week. And then I'll run through the top selling autographs who are the number 1 through 10-ish chases in the product so far based on how those singles are selling. Now, remember, if you want to get my personal rankings, I have 1 through 25 hitters and sleepers along with all of the pitchers from this product ranked over on the website, www.prospect-analytics.com. Make sure you go over to the site, read the write-ups. There's a lot of good information there. There are a number of players whose autograph values, even a week after release, already seem like they're a pretty decent value. So make sure you go over and read the articles, see what I have to say about all of the players in this release, and find out which ones work the best for you for your investing strategy. Obviously, tracking the sales prices of all of these guys' autographs is very tricky, and it would not be possible without our good friend Dahl over at prospectpulse.com, whose website tracks everything. He has the 2026 Bowman checklist loaded in. You can go to it and sort through the autograph sales, all the different variations that have sold for every player. There are a couple players who might not have base autographs that you might not even realize if you haven't been over to the site and checked out all of his sales, his charts. They're incredible. So make sure you go over to prospectpulsev1.com. So I had Dahl join me today so we can talk some of those singles prices and maybe who's undervalued and who's overvalued 1 week from the release of 2026 Bowman baseball. We are joined today by Dahl from prospectpulse.com, prospectpulsev1.com, the number 1 tool for tracking Bowman autograph pricing. How's it going today, Dahl?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm great. So 2026 Bowman, we've had 1 week of sales. We're officially 1 week and a day from the release. And I know that your site has been tracking all of the first autograph pricing. So I'm sure everyone wants to know, there's a lot of talk about Ethan Holliday, Edward Florentino, but as of today, on completed sales, who are the top 5 most expensive first autographs in the product?
So we got probably a surprise leading us off at number 1 with Sung-Jung Kim, 2-way prospect, pitching in Texas farm system. Feel like prices might be a little artificially inflated there, but not too far behind him, we have Ethan Holliday coming in at just about $235 today. Then we have a pretty big drop-off, and we got Edward Florentino at $143, Justin Gonzalez at $133, and Ava Arquette at $121, $122. Pretty high prices for this far from release. I mean, usually the first couple of days, first 3 days or so, prices are pretty inflated. Obviously, it'll take a little bit longer to see, like, prices trend all the way down to probably where the market actually will settle, but 8 prospects above 100 8 days after release is pretty unheard of.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because I actually went and looked at my 2025 Bowman article from a year ago, and 1 week after and mind you, 2025 Bowman, that product aged well. I mean, you have McGonigal, you've got Jesus Madej, there's a lot of big names, JJ Weatherholt. 1 week after the release of 2025 Bowman, there was only 4 autographs averaging over $100, and there are 8 of them in this product right now.
That's pretty remarkable, and the names you're mentioning in the 2025 release compared to some of the names here, I feel like there was a lot of excitement going into 2025. Checklist for 26 was pretty good, but I mean, there weren't those top tier names other than maybe the Ethan Hollidays or the Ava Arquettes, really. It feels like it's a different group of players that are headlining this checklist this year.
Yeah, I know that in 2025 Bowman Chrome, obviously, when I did my rankings, Shotaro Mori ended up being a much bigger chase in that product than I expected. Everyone gets attached to this idea of the next Ohtani, this 2-way player from Japan. And so when I made my rankings, I put Sung-Jung Kim as my number 3 prospect because I was like, listen, I don't have him ranked in my prospect rankings, but because of the market, because of the story, the 2-way player from Korea, $1.5 million signing bonus, people are going to eat this up. But seeing him be number 1 ahead of Florentino and Ethan Holliday, pretty shocking early on.
Yeah, it certainly is pretty shocking. And I'm looking at like some of the sales volume too. I mean, he has decent volume. It's nothing compared to like Ethan Holliday, who's got over 100 total cards sold within the first 8 days. He's only got about 50 or so far, but still seeing these like prices sustained at like pretty good rates is pretty surprising in my opinion. Of course, there's that value in like we've seen this once before with Shohei. Let's try and chase it early, but at the same time, is that really a like sustainable investment? Like
Yeah,
mark
that
logic?
and the same thing with, is his price sustainable? Then you go down to number 2 on the list, and you almost have to worry after what we've seen happen to Jackson Holiday's cards, if Ethan Holiday's card price is sustainable, and if that's also another thing where it's like you're buying the now. Granted, he's been hot, so that helps. Any player who's been hot during release week, that helps. Obviously, he's more of a power hitter than his brother, so there's a little bit more to get excited about. But him being, you said, $100 more expensive than Edward Florentino, that blew my mind.
It's pretty interesting too, and I think you and I have kind of talked about this previously. The timing of this release was pretty spectacular for a few of these players. We got Ethan Holiday, who's been hot. We've got Justin Gonzalez, who's been hot. Aloy's been hot. Hartman's been hot. Andrew Fisher's been hot. Like all of these guys who are priced above $100 have been performing at like an exceptional rate to start the season too. So I'm wondering how much that's playing into this inflated pricing we're seeing
Yeah,
today.
it definitely, and that's why I always talk about it. Bowman, like flagship Bowman, is always one of the hardest products to buy singles of, because like if a guy gets hot during release week, you might not have those 2-3 weeks for the prices to come down. Whereas when you look at 2025 Bowman, I said there was 4 guys with a base auto above 100, in the first week. Kevin McGonigal dropped below 100 because he had a sprained ankle, he wasn't playing. So it's like, in Bowman, maybe the strategy is almost to look at the guys who aren't playing well, because those are the ones that seem to be dropping at a faster rate in the first week.
And that's a good point. I know I've done a lot of research into this, and it's not something that can be like a blanket like statement over the market, but usually we see prices drop over the first 3 months following release, and that's about 90% of players, I think, was the last I had seen, don't ever reach the prices they're reaching this week. So it
Crazy.
could be possible that there are these players who are those exceptions, who are those edge cases that aren't playing well at the time of their release, and everyone's kind of writing them off. We've talked about this before, I think, on the last time I was on the episode. We discussed how the hobby is efficient in their market pricing, but also inefficient. And like those two ideas existing at the same time just don't feel possible. But there are players where you can find inefficiencies and find these quicker returns.
Yeah, I can tell you that, I'm not typically someone who would buy singles like 1 week after release. But I was telling you before we came on, when I saw the prices, almost always if I see a $150 base autograph, I'm immediately like, that guy's out of my price range, because you can't really go up from there unless you're going to be a top 5 prospect. I will say, I think Edward Florentino could be a top 5 prospect. Not that $150 is cheap for a base autograph, but my target price on him, I thought he would settle somewhere in the range that Jesus Madej did after the first week last year, which was around like 250. So the fact that Florentino is not only $100 below that target price, but $100 below Ethan Holiday, I feel like somehow, and it's weird because he got all the hype, the Pirates are the most expensive team in every PYT break. And he feels almost to me the same way I felt about McGonigal last year, where I was like, why is he, of all people, why is he the one that people are sleeping on? But I honestly think that he's not getting the respect he deserves.
No, it certainly doesn't feel like that. And just as you're talking, kind of looking through his recent sales, and it's so all over the place. Like yesterday we had a base auto at 125, then 155, then 110, then 158.99, then 125. It's like it's all over the place, and it kind of thinking like, are people overreacting and just trying to take advantage of these high prices and get rid of their stock while they have it? Or is this something else that's leading to maybe some more inefficient pricing?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it has to do with, I think a lot of people who open Bowman will just go to MLB.com and look at prospect rankings. And there was a time where in 2025 Bowman, even though Jesus Medei got pumped up as much as he did, if you go to MLB.com and this guy's the 25th, 26th ranked prospect, you're going to be like, okay, he's good, but his base autograph shouldn't be $200. I think that maybe the fact that MLB hasn't fully leaned in to the Edward Florentino hype yet is probably what's keeping a lot of people hitting his cards from holding on to them. I think that he is, as far as the hobby's concerned, he's a top 5 hitting prospect for me. So I think that even at $150, I honestly don't hate that price at all for him.
Yeah, yeah. I was just looking. He's in what, the 30s on MLB.com, and you got Ethan Holliday, who's a top 20 prospect. So it makes sense that the market is priced the way it is if you're looking at it exclusively through the like prospect ranking pipeline.
Yeah, and I think that that's where you can find, maybe not so much in draft and Chrome, but in Bowman, where the season is ongoing. I think that a lot of the value comes from knowing that guys are good, but maybe MLB pipeline hasn't brought them up yet. So the people opening these cards, they see Edward Florentino, immediately they go to MLB.com, they think that he's worse than Ethan Holliday. Whereas if you were to look into some of the more advanced analytics, especially for their age, the level they play at, they're not even close in my rankings. I can tell you that.
I mean, using the site, we can definitely even like pull the two of them up side by side to look and see at the differences that exist between the two prospects. Yeah. I mean, you can just see like a recent price for Edward Florentino being 110 and the most recent for Ethan Holliday being $267. And we look at the rankings even on the site just based on your rankings, your hobby rankings that have been very helpful to giving these users like an insightful edge into investing in prospects. You're very high on Edward Florentino, and Ethan Holliday is a great prospect, but there's some name recognition that's probably artificially inflating those prices beyond what we're already seeing. If we go through like individual player pages too, we can see not having the greatest hitting start to his season, but he's only 19 years old at high A, 3.22 years younger than the average age in his level. He's a top 20% hitter in terms of power. He's not striking out that much.
Yeah, I mean, a 224 ISO at 19 and high A that's mashing the ball.
We can go look at Ethan Holliday. He's mashing the ball, but he's a level below. He's the same age, only 2.12 years younger than average age at his level, and he's striking out at almost a 30% clip. I mean, is that something to be concerned about? Maybe not. It's still pretty fresh into his professional career, but the numbers aren't screaming like this is a $300 or $200 card.
Yeah, it's like he does look much better this year than he did last year in terms of the strikeouts and the contact and everything. But I mean, like when you're looking at the pricing, like you look at like, obviously you can't compare anybody to Connor Griffin because Connor Griffin is a unicorn in what he did. But when Connor Griffin's base autograph was $300, he was 19 years old in Double-A. Like he was not only two levels ahead of where Ethan Holliday is, but he was performing better, up 2 levels than Ethan Holliday is in Single-A. So it's like, I do like Ethan Holliday. I think I put my expected target base autograph on him at around like 125 to 150. So I thought I had him $100 under Florentino. The fact that he's $100 over Florentino, even with the name recognition, they put him on the box. Topps kind of shoved him down our throats. Still very surprising to see the gap be that big.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think this is something that you and I have kind of discussed pretty frequently beforehand and trying to find like how can we make or find an edge in this market. And it's truly one of those things where timing is really difficult with this release. And I was trying to sit down and do my rankings too, and I feel like so much more comfortable ranking draft and ranking Chrome because there's so much more there to rely on than just this early in the season, so many different like nuanced factors at play.
Yeah, well, it's like I can remember, like it's the only one that while I'm doing my rankings, as I'm writing the articles, I keep having to move guys because there's so much going on, in the 2 weeks that I'm writing these articles. Like Eric Hartman was an honorable mention for me when I started my write-up. He was like a fringe top 20 when I started my write-up. By the time I published that article, he was top 10. And he's selling even higher than I had him ranked. It's like there's some guys who just get so hot that you can't even catch up.
And that's another factor at play too. And we've kind of touched on this already, but like there are such high sales volume for these players too that even like we sat down before we started recording to talk about prices, and even those prices have changed in the last hour. Like there's so many sales happening every day that, it's really hard to keep track and keep measure of. But it's also one of those things where social media plays such a big role in it. You had also mentioned this earlier. Like he's now, according to certain publications, a top, 25, top 50 prospect in baseball, and was not ranked before this season started. So how do you react to that? How do you account for these massive overcorrections, or maybe it's just a correction? I don't know.
Yeah, I even when I put out my PYT rankings article, the only team that I had to give a note for was the Braves. And I had to be like, listen, based on my rankings, they're like the 12th, the 13th best team in this product. But you can't, if you're trying to get them in PYT, you can't assume that that's where they're going to be priced, because there's no way to just capture what Eric Hartman is doing in the card market right now. Like they snap sell in every break. His singles are through the roof. It's like they were the only team that I had to be like, listen, I understand that I'm going to be low on them, but I can only adjust so quickly.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I can sit here and study sales all day and still have no clue what to expect next. It's so quick and so volatile. Like how has the prices shaped up based on PYT prices you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten into many breaks, but I do know that the Pirates were selling what seemed like twice as, getting charged twice as much as any other team. And granted, you have the Connor Griffin autograph, which isn't a first. It's still selling really well. But I don't think the people who were buying the Pirates at $400 a case or whatever were expecting Edward Florentino's base autographs to be $100 cheaper than Ethan Holliday's. So I feel like you can, if you go over to your site, you can look at these single prices. You can probably get a good gauge of what teams are undervalued in PYT breaks. Like you said, just on that page right there, you have Ethan Holliday at $234 and Roldy Brito at $56. That's $300 worth of base autographs between two players. So, whereas you look like the Pirates, you're hitting Florentino or Connor. Maybe if you get the Rockies I've seen the Rockies, I think like 150 a case in some of the places. Whereas one Ethan Holliday base autograph is covering that price. You don't get that with a lot of teams. So it is valuable to track these sales, because, you might look at that list and come away thinking that the Rangers might be the team that you want to go buy in PYT breaks. If Sungjoon Kim's base autographs are doing $250, so it really is good to keep up, look at your site, as these sales roll in, so you can kind of find value when you're looking at PYT breaks.
Yeah, I know we've also kind of touched on this earlier, but the pricing of PYT breaks, like it's really hard to find the best value there, because everyone has their own subjective rankings that they're applying it to. But I do feel like using the website gives you a unique ability to kind of find those maybe more inefficiently priced teams in a pick your team or pick your player type of break. It's still one of those things where, there's 3 autos per box. So how do you like efficiently go into that and buy into a break? Are you looking for a team where you have the Ethan Holliday and you can make your money back if you hit just one base auto? Or are you looking for something where there's maybe 3 or 4 players that are selling in the 20s or 30s, knowing that there's a better chance that you get one player's autograph if you buy one with 4 players in that team?
Yeah, that's kind of tough. It's like, do you go for it all, or do you go for, I'm going to take the Orioles because they have 7 different, or the Brewers because they have 7 different autographs, and just base it on the fact that you have a better chance of not skunking with those teams, even though you're not going to get a top end player. It really is interesting. I'd love to know how people's brain works on which one they kind of value when they enter PYT breaks. I personally just look for players that I like or would like to hit, but I'm sure that everybody has a different strategy for what teams they're buying. Right. But like with the Braves are snap selling in PYT breaks. When I did my rankings, I looked at all because obviously there's a lot of short printed inserts in this product. You have your patchwork, your anime, all that stuff. Those cards sell extremely well. If you hit, the Dodgers first autograph checklist might not be exciting, but if you hit an Otani anime in a break. I mean, so you have to account for that stuff. So it's not only first autographs, but the Braves was one in particular. If you don't hit an Eric Hartman auto or an Owen Carey auto, you're getting skunked in Braves PYT breaks. So it's like, that's got to like weigh in the back of your mind that, like you have a way better chance of coming away with nothing.
Right. I think like kind of going way back to when you and I had first met, like we've kind of shared like this mutual thought process of like wanting to help people go into any aspect of the prospect market in like an informed manner. So you're right, like it is more nuanced than just looking at base auto prices. There are so many different factors because at the end of the day, the most expensive card in this entire release could very well be a Shohei Ohtani anime, right? But
or a Murakami rookie auto, or
right. There's so many different things that could happen with the prices and things that we can't really account for. But at the end of the day, like you and I have a similar perspective where we really like the prospect market. That's probably the most fun way to invest in cards, at least in my opinion. And trying to give people this information is something that I've always kind of relied on as a motivating factor, like an underlying mission in the work I'm doing, or information I'm posting to Twitter, stuff like that.
Absolutely. So that begs the question. We've talked about these guys who are selling for over $100 and guys whose cards are selling well because they're hot at the right time. Is there anyone who's outside of your screen sharing right now, the top 15ish names? Is there anyone outside of that $50 range that maybe their prices are falling off because they're not playing extremely well, that you think is kind of a sneaky grab? Anyone that you're eyeing in particular?
So if we were to go to a different page here, the analytics page, and filter the same way with the 2026 release, I've built it in to have these indicators of the hot cold streak, so I can take a look and be more prepared.
Cool.
And understand how things are shaping up. And there are a couple players that have been kind of catching my eye. Unfortunately for me, I've like blackpilled myself into really, really liking pitchers. And what stuck out most to me, and actually was pretty interesting when I posted a preview of the top 20 prices, I got a couple of people asking about David Shields. Where's David Shields landing in terms of this release? And it seems like he might be one of those players we had alluded to earlier where he's a pretty good pitcher, but he's not had the best streak of games. The last 3 games, he's put up a 6.39 ERA, 7.1 K per 9, and 1.18 WHIP. So he's someone that started to catch my eye. And then if you get a little bit cheaper, I'm kind of a sucker for Owen Carey. There he is. Jeez, we've already talked about him too. That's bad. But he's been playing well, and he's still priced like kind of in a cheap manner. I don't know.
You know what that is too? That's the old player B chase. When you are the player who's not the top option that people are after in breaks, it ends up being one of the most valuable singles to buy after the break, because everyone buying all these Brave spots, they're chasing Eric Hartman cards. So they turn around, they sell those Owen Carries. I love the spot of being like the player B chase in a product.
And I think that kind of goes back to the like Kevin McDonald, Jesus Mate, and JJ Weatherholt. Like these guys were top names, but only one of them gets the top crown, and that's the highest price, right? So then you have these other players who probably could be priced higher that aren't, because they're not that top chase. They're the second or third chase in the release, or maybe in the team. So that's a good way to kind of approach it, good way to look at it.
Yeah, I like the player B chases. There's a couple of names that I feel like are selling cheap that I think are kind of sneaky so far.
Who are you keeping your eye on?
Oh, I can't give away my secrets, but right now, looking at the prices, just based on, so I went through and took off your site, I took all of the average base autographs, I ranked them, hitters and pitchers, and then I put them against my rankings of hitters and pitchers, and looked for the biggest discrepancies, like players I'm the highest on that are priced the lowest. So I was just doing that before we started to kind of see where there might be value. And honestly, when it comes to one of the names towards the top, one of the biggest ones for me is Juan Sanchez of the Blue Jays. And he's a player who just dominant in the DSL last year. I always say you can't trust DSL stats, but he's a monster. He plays on the same Dunedin team that JoJo Parker's on, Blaine Bullard's on, They play in the Florida League, which is my home. The single A team comes here all the time, so I see them. Juan Sanchez is a specimen, 6'3", plus power, shortstop, like all the things you want for the hobby. Now, what happened was he was so impressive when he came to the States that the Blue Jays opted to have him skip the complex league, which is always tough. We saw Elian Pena do it. We saw Kevin Alvarez do it. There weren't a ton of players from last year's DSL class that skipped the complex league. Juan Sanchez is one of them. So Juan Sanchez is struggling right now, and he's batting, as you show, in 133, and none of it looks good. But, I mean, when you take into consideration that he's an 18-year-old kid, just came to the States, I mean, this is kind of like my wheelhouse for buying in Bowman flagship, is like, you've seen the tools, you hear how the organization talks about the kids. He's ranked high on some prospect lists. He's ranked high on my prospect list, but he hasn't performed since he's been in the States. When his cards come out, everyone looks up his batting average. Everyone looks up everything. It doesn't look impressive. No one wants his cards. So that's kind of like my sweet spot for buying. I think you kind of like, as they're working through these growing pains, is probably a good time to buy their cards. But yeah, Juan Sanchez is definitely one of the ones that jumped out to me. I think he's currently the 11th most expensive hitter on your site, and I had him as a top 5 chase. So,
Wow. But that actually begs an interesting question, right? Do people rely on counting stats too much to inform their investments? Like the raw
100%.
numbers, as you like alluded to, aren't great. Looking at that on the surface, it's not that impressive. So does that deter that many people from buying, you think?
Yeah, and I think that that is like one of the best, it really only works for young players, because obviously by the time you're 21, 22, you should have been performing. So it's like, it's kind of hard when you get to a certain age. But when you're an 18-year-old kid, and you kind of have to rely on like team, the scouts who scouted them when they were, before they were signed and stuff like that. But I've always felt that if you take a kid and, you're looking at the turnaround that Felton Celestin's having right now for the Mariners, he's having his best season yet. And we've all been waiting for that for like 3 years. But I think that when you get these kids where the tools are really good, they're young, they have a very high offensive upside, I think that a lot of people will look at that and be like, wow, he's batting 133. This guy's terrible. And they will have no intention of buying his cards, because that's the only thing they're looking at. And I think that sometimes you got to go a little bit deeper, especially on an 18-year-old kid. You can look more into, I mean, you can hear all the scouts rave about him, people in the organization rave about him. I think there are some things that you can look for that might not show up in the stat sheet, in the first 2 months of the season.
Yeah, that's a great point. I do think that's where it pays to pay for services like prospect analytics, where you have this insight and you're kind of articulating on reasons as to why he remains a good chase despite the underwhelming surface level stats. I think you really do need to have that different mindset where you're more looking at the underlying tools, the plate discipline, the contact numbers where it's available to make like these informed decisions. But I think that kind of goes to the idea that also has kind of guided myself in the past year or two, is that like you have to be willing to put in the work to like look through the maybe less fun stuff, read through the prospect scouting reports and the scout grades, and it can get tedious, but also that's how you gain this edge, and you rely on those people that do the work for you, and it just puts you in a unique position to have these conversations and to like highlight these prospects. I know historically we've seen some pretty massive ROIs in short amount of times based on things that you've said, with like certain underlying stats coming to fruition in performances. And it's just pretty remarkable how these certain things can influence so many different factors in the card market.
Shout out Nathan Flewelling on that one.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the guys I was talking about.
But you know who's another one that you can pull up the page on? As I was looking at my discrepancies between the pricing and stuff, another one, like you said, it's good to use these tools that are available, because I use them myself when I make my rankings. Like, I talk to people who aren't inside the organization, but are on the backfields watching these guys play during the spring, who I can get reports from, and they kind of get like an inside. Like Anthony Ianson was an example. We had Andrew Parker from Sox Prospects telling me, you know, he looks better than Kyson Witherspoon. So getting that kind of information from the guys who watch them play every day is definitely worth watching. And one of the ones for this release is my favorite name on the checklist is Handle Free Encarnacion, 80 grade name. But he's one. I have some buddies who hang out on the backfields in Arizona during spring training for a lot of the ACL games and the time leading up to spring training. And the Brewers have 7 autographs on this checklist. So I gave a couple of my buddies this checklist. I'm like, you know, we got Andrew Fisher, Braylon Antunez. You know, there's some names on here. And one of them was, when I gave him the list, he was like, Handle Free Encarnacion. And I was like, random. I haven't seen him ranked anywhere. He's not a top 30 Brewers prospect. He's not ranked many places. So then I go and I start looking at some of the Dynasty baseball rankers that I personally, you know, look at that I think do the best job, the guys who get the in-person looks. One of those is Chris Clegg from Dynasty Dugout. He's great. He's one of the best. I go to his rankings where I haven't seen Handle Free Encarnacion top 400 anywhere. He's inside Clegg's top 300. And I've got these people who are watching the Brewers backfields telling me that they're impressed by Handle Free Encarnacion. Those two things immediately just ping my brain. And I'm like, this is my sleeper for the product. He's been okay this year. He's got a 109 WRC plus, like you got pulled up there. But one of the big things was that last year as an 18-year-old, you know, he had good contact rates, strikeout rate under 17%, but he only hit 5 home runs. This year, he's already hit 6. He's already surpassed his home run total from last year. 199 ISO as a 19-year-old. I mean, now you've got a guy who projects for average power, who was just okay last year. Now there's more power, still a good contact hitter. I feel like the Brewers are a team that seem like they don't miss. When in doubt, take a Brewers or a Rays or a Guardians prospect. They're probably going to be better than you think they are. So just stuff like that. Like you said, staying in tune. You have a couple different people who have seen these players live say that a player looks like they're a strong prospect. You know, sometimes people just look at the box scores. Handle Free Encarnacion's batting .212 right now. But considering he's priced, I think you had him on the sheet as of today, his base autograph is $15, which is 30th out of the hitters on this checklist. I feel like when I'm looking for sleepers, if you're young and you have a lot of tools, that's one way to look at a sleeper. But I've heard good reports on this kid, and he's cheap. So he's another person that I'm definitely looking at early on.
Yeah, I think you gotta put in the work to find those people that contribute such amazing things to not only the card community, but like Dynasty baseball prospecting as a whole. Like Dynasty Dugout's such a great resource. I also find myself looking through a lot of like the local team sites, specifically like soxprospects.com. Like that's an incredible resource to have a more like in-depth dive into some of the prospects in local farm systems with guys who are putting in the time, energy, and effort to write up these reports and to watch these games. And, you know,
it really is incredible too, because as we're doing the Bowman stuff, obviously you have to follow. There's thousands of prospects with Bowman autographs, and there's 30 different teams. When you are someone who follows one team exclusively, you are able to just gain so much more information because you're focused on such a smaller, like, I thought that I knew prospects, and then I went to the backfields in Fort Myers with Andrew Parker from Sox Prospects. Dude, he started talking about, I'm like, who's this? He's like, oh, 19th round pick out of, and he just starts rattling, and I'm like, these are the people's brains that I want to be inside.
yeah, it's just incredible. Like, I think I have a pretty good baseball mind, but then I listen to people like Andrew Parker talking. I'm like, it's a whole different world.
It really is. You got to utilize those resources for sure. Some of those guys are just so in tune with what's going on in the organization. They tend to know. And like you said, Dynasty Dugout, he's another one. Clegg gets a lot of good live looks at these players, and he's been early on a lot of players that I've bought Bowman autographs of. So, you know, shout out to all those guys who go out there and I mean, ranking top 400 prospects is not easy, you know. So these guys who put in that work, they're definitely greatly appreciated.
More than they'll probably ever know.
Right. But looking back at this 2026 Bowman checklist, we mentioned that there was, after 1 week after release of 2025 Bowman, there was 4 players with a base autograph over $100. This year there's 8, so it's doubled. But there's also something that caught my eye as well. In 2025, of the top 20 most expensive first autographs after 1 week, 2 of them were pitchers. In this release, 6 of them are pitchers. 6 in the top 20. Is it the year of the pitcher, or is this the pitcher's release is the question?
Oh man, that's a pretty
Or
tough
both?
question to answer. I think it might be a little bit of both. I think that what we've seen in the pitcher market over the last year and a half now has been just unprecedented. A lot of people attribute that to the rise of Paul Skeens and him being a top pitcher in the MLB pretty much instantly. Um, but I do think that this checklist is full of a lot of good pitching talent, and there's a lot of things to look forward to in some of these top selling pitching cards. Where I become a little bit more hesitant is we've seen so many of these guys getting put onto the IL for Tommy John, and they're so young. And then what do you do with their cards when you're buying them for, let's say, $50, and then they go on the IL and they're out for the next year? What happens to the market then? It feels like it's just opening yourself up to too much risk.
Yeah, pitchers are tough, and it's like that's why I get so torn on Seth Hernandez. And it's like when his base when I did my 2025 Bowman draft, like preview, or not preview but rankings after, I can remember his base autograph being 125. And I remember thinking, even for as good as he is, $125 for a pitcher who's probably, you don't know, like, God forbid, hopefully no injuries, but how many years away he is from the MLB, how many things could happen. And then here we are 3 months later, that autograph's over $250. I think it's close to $300 now. So, but yeah, I'm the same way. It's like, you just never, that's why with pitchers, with hitters, I'll take the young guy who has time to develop. Pitchers, I almost sway towards, like in this release, like a Gage Jump. You're like, this guy might get called up like tomorrow, like maybe that's the better strategy with pitchers, because a lot can go wrong with your arm if you're stuck in the minors for 3-4 years, for sure. And it happens to most of them.
Yeah. I mean, this season alone, like, we've seen like what feels like an unusual number of injuries specifically towards these young pitchers too. And development's so important at such a young age that you're taking them away from a year of their development work too, and postponing that. So how are they going to respond mentally? How are they going to react physically? Like, there's so many questions that remain unanswered. Speaking of Seth Hernandez, he is currently just under $300, most recent sale being $331, and is the most expensive pitcher in all minor leagues as of today, which is just,
and I'm pretty sure he's got to be close to double Cade Anderson, right? Pretty close.
If you look at the screen, yeah, you see he's about $100 more than Cade Anderson. Cade Anderson's just about $200, which
him and Connor broke whatever rules there were for how high an autograph can get. Both of them. It's incredible. Who thought we'd see the day that the Pirates were just cleaning up in Bowman?
Even beyond just that, like, I remember last year I made like this visualization when Jack passed Roman for most expensive prices, and I'm looking back at that now. It's like they were mid 300s. Like, that's not unusual anymore. These markets are just out of control, it feels like. And
especially with the pitchers, I can remember last year putting this is before Cade and Seth were drafted. My 1 and 2 for pitchers to end last season were Thomas White and Robbie Snelling. I can remember their base autographs being like $50, and I was like, okay, so that's there's not a pitching prospect non-debuted that's more than $50. So maybe that's like the cap of number one. And then you look at Seth Hernandez, $300. There's 3 different pitchers in this new release that are over $50. So it's like everyone's market has gone up. It seems like the market on pitchers just keeps going. But when you look at the 2026 Bowman, the prices so far on your site, I had them pulled up here. Number 1 most expensive pitcher in the newest product is Kendry Churia, whose base autograph's around $60. Then you have Caden Scarborough of the Rangers, also around $59.60. Gage Jump of the Athletics around $55. So there's 3 of them currently above $50. So you're saying, obviously 50 plus for a pitcher is tough. When you get down after that, the next kind of crop, price-wise, are Seo Jun Moon of the Blue Jays, David Shields, Esteban Mejia, Dasan Hill. Who out of those 4 in that group there is your guy?
Oh man, you already know who my guy is. I saw that one video of Moon on Twitter and fell in love with that breaking ball he
One
had
pitch.
thrown. One pitch. That's all I needed. Obviously, like he's very far away. He's in rookie ball still. I don't think I would invest in him too heavily, but I do think there is some upside there where he has that strikeout potential that feels like it plays such a big role in driving prices.
Yeah, and it's like he's got the the international market. He's tall, he's young, he's got a good frame, good feel for his pitches. There is a lot of checked boxes if you want to buy someone based on 4 innings that you've seen. So that does put it in a tough spot, but I like that pick.
I do think it's a little bit biased recently too, and again, before we had started recording, we talked about this resurgence in pitcher development in the Blue Jay system as well. Like now we see Savage, he's having an excellent start to his professional career. We see my other guy, Johnny King, like they're starting to show signs of like having a good pitcher development framework, and that helps instill a little bit more confidence in myself too.
Yeah, I actually love Moon. He was almost a top five pitcher chase for me when I did my rankings. But another one if people are looking for, so he's a great one to target. He's a great one if you're like a long term hold. If you're like someone who likes to hold people long term, I think that his upside for the price is really good as long as you're willing to, like you said, gamble with the fact that we've only seen a couple innings. Another one in that range that I think I have ranked higher than he's priced right now is Dasan Hill of the Twins. I think that if you're someone who buys pitchers, he's a very sneaky name to look at in this new release. His base autograph is already down to, what do you have, $26? Not cheap, but lefty with electric stuff. 3+ pitches. The command's been shaky, but he's looked a little bit better in his last couple starts. But he's another player that I saw live because he pitched for Fort Myers Mighty Muscles. But he has electric stuff, big frame, lefty. Twins do well at developing arms. I tend to go towards their prospects a lot. I thought that there was a chance that people would view him as like a top 3 pitcher in this release. I ended up putting him at 5, but he's priced as like 7th. So, I mean, he's definitely someone that I would be looking at for sure if I'm buying singles.
Pretty good choice. I'm also wondering, like, kind of going back to that counting stats thing, like, we've seen this change in perspective as to what matters and what doesn't, but it's not something that's like unanimously embraced. I mean, just yesterday, I think Cam Schlittler was talking about how ERA doesn't matter.
It is
And then
incredible.
yeah, and we see here on Dasan Hill's page, like he's got a 5.47 ERA. Do you think someone looks at that and then they're like, "Oh, absolutely not. That's horrible."
For
Whereas
sure.
like nowadays we know that we can't really rely on stats that are dependent on others.
I when I watched that Cam Schlittler interview, I almost wanted to, the Wolf of Wall Street gif where they're banging on the table saying "one of us." That's exactly how I felt listening to Cam Schlittler. Not only did he say that ERA doesn't matter, but I think he used the phrase that he got BABIP'd to death, and that's why he had a bad outing. And I'm just like, I love this guy. But yeah, there is
Yes.
way more. I mean, we talked about for a little bit. There was time leading up to Jacob Mizorowski's debut where many people, including Jim Callis from MLB Pipeline, told me the same thing. There were scouts, there were people in the organization who were almost to the point with Miz that they were like, they should just make him a reliever because he can't throw strikes. And now look at him. So it's like there are certain things like the ERA can get ugly, especially if your like walk rates are high, which Dasan Hill has struggled with walks. But at the end of the day, if you go to like if you're getting unlucky with the BABIP, if your FIP and your XFIP are better than your ERA, if your contact rates are low, there's a lot of things that suggest that maybe you've just been unlucky. And I think that he's one of the ones that you look at, like Schlittler said, sometimes you just run into bad luck. And I think that Dasan Hill has run into a little bit of bad luck. He has a 5.47 ERA. His FIP is 3.31. So it's like he's got 13.86 strikeouts per 9 innings. So it's like, yeah, he's walking too many batters, but when hitters are batting 200 and under against you and they have contact rates under 70%, I think that those are the things, strikeout to walk ratio, that I weigh a little bit more heavily in pitchers. So I love that a professional pitcher like Cam Schlittler came out and said that he doesn't look at ERA. And I was like, me neither, buddy.
Yeah. No, it's like such a good resurgence that I think if people bought in, at least in the hobby world, would help them so much in terms of like long-term success in their investments and like increasing ROIs. Like I spent a couple weeks ago, I had posted that stats that actually predict success and pretty much spent the entire, I think I had to split it up over 3 parts, spent the entire 3 parts talking about how predictive stats cannot be dependent on other people. Which with ERA, like there are so many other factors at play that, a 5.47 ERA isn't great, but it's also like he could have really terrible defenders behind him who are constantly causing issues. It's also kind of extends beyond that too, in the sense where like strikeout rate, walk rate, those are both important in terms of like the predictive power. But I'm kind of curious how you view it when like maybe the strikeout rate's really high, the walk rate's really high, but then that strikeout to walk rate is still above 20%. Like how do you handle that?
I used to be a hater of high walk rates, but like I said with Miz kind of like changed my mind on stuff, and Miz kind of like created like a mold of his own that I think Thomas White of the Marlins also fits in, and I think that Johnny King of the Blue Jays also fits in, where I used to see 5 walks per 9 innings, 5.5, 6. I think Miz was up at 6 at a couple levels. I used to see those and be like, well, this is a reliever. I don't want anything to do with him. But what Miz proved, and Thomas White is proving, and I think Johnny King will prove too, is that if you're so unhittable that the players you walk can't score, I mean, that counts for something. If you're consistently missing bats, you're inducing swinging strike percentages of 20%, contact rates against you are 65%. I think opponents are batting like under 150, like 150 off Johnny King. If people can't make contact with you, all your command has to be is good enough. And I think
Right.
that's plenty. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Right. It's not like it's so egregious that they're walking 3 batters an inning. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 2 in the worst of their innings, which isn't great. It limits the length they can go in their starts, but also like if you can't hit the pitches, you can't hit the damn pitches. It doesn't matter.
I mean, you know who's a perfect example of that? You know who used to get himself into trouble like that with walks, and he has a pretty good track record as a professional, is Blake Snell. Blake Snell pitched like that for forever.
Yeah, as long as some of these people have been alive, to be honest with you. It's
Right.
crazy. Like I think that there needs to be some balance that we find in this hobby, and like it's not just black and white. You have to exist in that gray area, but it feels like everyone thinks they have the right approach. I think the biggest thing that like helps me and has helped me get to where I am today is the idea that like I know there's things I don't know, and I'll continue to learn, continue to read, rely on those resources that we've already touched on to kind of help change my perspective or maybe give me a new perspective on the matter. I think that's something that people need to embrace more because there are players
Absolutely.
that maybe on the surface we don't look great. Like we've talked about this before, like Johnny King, like that walk rate's not great. It's pretty concerning that he has this questionable control, but he's so good with his like when he does hit the strike zone, he's unhittable. So like how do you find that balance to exist and like endorse a player or support a player when there's so many things to consider?
And when you think about like the hobby upside, I feel like from a card value perspective, like the reason that Miz sells so well, the reason that Skeen sells so well is people want to see you pump 102. The reason that Carlos Lagrange's cards sell so well, other than the fact that he's a Yankees prospect, aren't because people think that he is going to be a good starter. It's because he throws the ball. People saw him throw 102 and strike out Judge in spring training. That's the thing. So it's like we get so hung up on this Johnny King walks too many batters. Even like we looked at Esteban Mejia, who's in 2026 Bowman. His walk per 9 right now is 12. He's walking 12 batters per 9. He can't find the zone. He is the 6th most expensive pitcher in this product. You know why? Because he's a teenager and he throws 102 miles an hour. That is like, if you're looking for hobby success, and it's like I became so, and I know you did too, like in love with these guys like Mitch Bratt, and it's like you see him like walks per 9 under 2, and you're like, this is like my idea of a pitcher. He's not, he's controlling the zone, he's mixing pitches. What you come to find out when you get deep in the Bowman game, those players don't sell that well. you know? So it's like when you see these Johnny Kings and you see these guys and you're like, wow, they're walking too many batters, but also no one can hit them and they're striking out 15 batters per 9 innings. That's the stat that you really need to be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I almost never will, and I know this sounds bad, but like when you're looking to find that next investment, that next pitching prospect, if you will. I know a lot of people say there's no such thing as a pitching prospect, but for our sake in this argument, like I won't even look at pitchers really that have a K per 9 under 10. Like that's how you get your return on investment these days. And there are players like Mitch Brett, like you've alluded to, that don't sell that well, but then you have like that hope where like he's just a consistent starter. Hope he gets called up and doesn't get shelled in his debut, and that's when you sell, because there are still those opportunities, but they're not going to be as explosive. They're not going to be as big of returns as you had seen with like Miz and with Schlittler last year and stuff.
Yeah, it's like power is not everything, and it's like power for hitters and velocity for pitchers are like the same way, in that when you look at a hitter and you're like, well, his contact rates might be bad or whatever, but if his ISO was 100 last year and it's 250 this year, those are the things. If your card's going to go up, those are the things that are going to make there's the pitching. If your velocity goes up or if your strikeouts go up, those are the things. It's not your card values. I can give you multiple examples. Sean Sullivan of the Rockies. I'll give you examples of guys who consistently put up an ERA under 3 and their cards don't sell.
Right.
When you see the strikeouts go up and you see the velocity go up, you see the power go up for hitters, those are the things that are going to make your card sell. That's just the way that it is.
Like we've said already, it's all about finding that balance, because there's so many different ways to like position yourself best, and different strategies work for different people. But
for sure,
you have to be able to like operate in that gray area and consider different things, different factors. I think as far as like the 2026 release, there's very little room to even like consider investing at this point in time, though. Like there's a few players that have some upside at their current prices, but honestly, I just kind of let the prices play out as they will for the next month. See where they settle.
I know that you track these things. What would you say is the time frame? I know Bowman's tough because it's during the season, so guys that are hot will go up. What is generally the time frame after release that you see single prices kind of bottom out before they start to go back up?
Rule of thumb is usually somewhere between like 12 to 16 weeks, which I just
is it that long?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I usually just estimate it out at like 3 months. I mean, there's going to be room to make money within 2 months of release, because the prices will, like, they're not at their bottom, but you're not gonna get the best price, if that makes sense. Like maybe you buy into Kendry Churro at like $40 and his market eventually settles at 30. I don't think it would be unheard of for that to go back up to like $50-$60.
So what would be, we just said as of today on Prospect Pulse, there are 8 players on this checklist with a base autograph over $100 on average 1 week after release. Let's go 1 month after release, so about 3 weeks from today. What will that number of people with a base autograph over $100? How many names will it be?
I would probably put it at 3, 4, kind of similar to 2025 Bowman. I could see Ethan Holliday.
Kim will stay up there. Holliday will stay up there. Florentino will stay up there. And then after that, I mean, maybe Justin Gonzalez. I could see him being close.
I could see Justin Gonzalez. I could see Ava Arquette, simply for like name value alone, him being a high pick, and a lot of people.
Aloy, Andrew Fisher. It's tough as a college bat to keep that. Even Hartman. Hartman's so hot right now. Like, could he possibly stay this hot? And even if he does, I think that he could still come down. So your official guess, you think 3? So we're at 8 right now. You think 3 weeks from now we'll be at 3?
I could see 4, but I'd feel confident in at least 3 of them staying above 100. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that 3 is probably strong. I think that it's going to come down to Justin Gonzalez. I'm so interested to see where Red Sox fans will how high afloat they can keep him. I'll agree with you though. I think that 3 is probably, there's 8 of them now. I think they will all come down. I think that we'll see 3 of them a month from release.
Like I could see Kim coming down to like 175, Ethan to like 150, and then Edward, and like if Justin Gonzalez was to stay in the $100+ range, like just settling right above 100. which again, you've already mentioned like Edward Florentino at 150 feels like kind of a buy. So if enough people get behind Edward Florentino and he keeps getting like hyped up on Twitter and stuff, I could see that one being like the easiest like one to stay above 100, to be honest with you.
And and then another cool feature for those people who haven't been on your site is that you loaded in the 2026 Bowman checklist. It tracks sales of every variation, everything. There's multipliers, all that kind of stuff. What we found out from you putting in that thing is when you go to track the base autographs, there are players who have had variation autographs sell that have not had a base autograph sell. And there are two players who people might not know unless they've been paying very close attention who appear to not have base autographs in 2026 Bowman.
Yeah, that's right. Dylan Lewis and Wei and Lin both don't appear to have a base auto at this point in time. And there are some that have kind of slipped through. I don't really like to track redemptions because I don't think they are really indicative of fair market value. You have to price in the wait time, the effort it takes to redeem that card, and not a lot of people like to go through that process. So it might be that a couple redemptions have slipped through the filters because people just don't seem to put the word redemption in listing titles anymore. But as of right now, Dylan Lewis and Wei and Lin both have no base auto sales. If you look, you can see.
That's something worth looking at for people who are entering breaks, especially if you're buying in a PYP breaks, knowing that Wei and Lin and Dylan Lewis might be tough pulls.
So maybe it looks like he does have a base. It's just redemption. They're not slipping through for Wei and Lin. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, it's a redemption form, so that would be why.
So he has redemption base autograph.
Yes.
And Dylan Lewis could have the same. But still, even then, those are going to be extremely short printed. They're not going to sign 2,000 redemption base autographs. So you have to assume that these guys who have redemption base autographs are going to be extremely short printed. But Dylan Lewis doesn't look like he has any, huh?
No.
So Wei and Lin might be a redemption base auto. Dylan Lewis, no base autos at all, it looks like.
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
Just another thing worth looking at when you're buying into these breaks for sure.
Curious to hear your thoughts on the new inserts we're seeing. Have you given that any like consideration? Like the logo fractor, the park fractor, and I think this is the first year we have a yellow reptilian as well, or maybe it's a yellow X fractor. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can't. I feel like I don't know how I feel about the all the autograph variations. I've seen the pack fractor. I think the pack fractor is cool because it is on card, but I'm so like behind when it comes to new designs coming out. I like to stick with what I know. I see you have your multipliers pulled up here. Honestly, it seems like as we go on, True Blue, I mean, there was a day that True Blue used to be a 4x of a base. So far in 2026 Bowman, it's 6x. But then when you get into the non-true colors, like we talked about earlier, Gold Lava and Gold Shimmer are both under at like 7x right now. That feels kind of light for a new release. Usually during a new release, you see the colors sell extremely well, and then that gap kind of closes. So early on to see like yellow seems low, Gold Lava, Gold Shimmer seem low. Even True Orange seems a little bit low. So that's definitely worth noting.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting release based on how multipliers have settled so far. I guess the reason I had asked that question earlier is doing the math out for a number of like variations for Chrome Prospect autograph cards. I was doing the math a little bit differently because I know Sapphire and like Bowman and Bowman Sapphire are separate releases. For the sake of the website, I kind of treat them as the same. And this release itself was 3 variations less than the highest of all time, but that included the 7 Sapphire variations. So once we have Sapphire release, this is going to have 4 more variations than any other release has ever had for prospects.
Oh, that's very interesting. So you think that now that they've added all these extra variations, that could maybe change some of the multipliers? I mean, I do think that makes sense because, I feel like there was a time not that long ago where even though green is like a non-true color that Bowman people don't like, I mean, there was a time where if you got a green, you were like, oh, well, I didn't hit a base. Like this is still out of 99. But now you look at the page you have pulled up for 2026 Bowman, green, green grass, green lava, green reptilian, green shimmer. It's like they're going to pump these things so full of variations that they're probably going to kill the multipliers on all of them.
Right. Because now you're taking a variation that was once out of 99 and you're really making it more like out of 500, kind of like a refractor. I know they're different, but are they that different?
Are they? Right.
And some of them are pretty silly. Like the green grass is kind of a silly insert or variation. Like I'm not a huge fan of stuff like that. So like it does feel like over time we're slowly starting to drive down the value of these multipliers. And I'm also kind of curious to see like if there is that like shiny new toy thing. Are people gonna be going after the logo fractor, which is what, out of 35, or are they gonna be going after the park fractor, which is out of 89? Because that's something they've never seen before.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how where those kind of shake out as far as multipliers. But I appreciate you joining me talking 2026 Bowman. Obviously, for anyone who hasn't checked out the site, you go to prospectpulsev1.com. As he's been sharing the screen, if you're watching on video here, it's got all kinds of stuff. He's got the whole 2026 Bowman checklist added in. As those sales get paid for and are completed, the comps on all these players will change. They change as we were talking about them. The multipliers will update. So everything, it's really the only place you can go to see all of your Bowman autograph comps update in real time. It's awesome stuff, an incredible tool that everyone really should be using.
Well, I appreciate those kind words. And I have said this before. I do attribute a lot of where I'm at today to people like you in this community. You embraced me with open arms when I first came up to you, a year and a half ago now, almost, saying,
Yep.
Hey, I think I can get you more accurate prices for your articles. And like, I'm very appreciative for the opportunities that you've provided me.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of people might not even know that origin story, but what happened was Dahl was one of the original subscribers to my Substack. And I said in an article, we're talking the start of my Substack. I was like, I don't know that I can continue this thing, because there's no way I could sit down and manually comp all these base autographs. And you reached out and you said, hey, I think I might have a way that we can do this. And that started with you building a program to comp cards for me. And now it has turned into this website, which is incredible and has so many other cool features. And it's just been awesome to watch.
But it's people like you that come in and have always kind of tried to innovate the hobby and make it better and make people more informed, that inspire other people like myself. And I think you deserve your flowers for that. And I don't always say it, but I do appreciate you for the opportunities you've provided. I mean, I remember even back to probably 2023, like 3 years ago, like looking at the Hobby Advantage tool and like using that as such an integral part of my process. And now look at us. It's crazy to see where we've gone.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words.
Of course, man. And for those interested, there is a 7-day free trial of the website. You're more than welcome to cancel before your card's charged. You do have to put a card on file, but cancel anytime if you don't feel it's something you want to use. I'd appreciate you guys all checking it out.
But yeah, go over, check out 7-day free trial, prospectpulsev1.com. I'll put it up a text at the end of this so everyone can see it. But thank you again for joining me, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again to Dahl for joining us. There may not be a person in the world that I know of that tracks the daily sales of First Bowman autographs the way that he does. So he stays up to date on those trends. So very glad that he was able to join us to talk about what we've seen early on in 2026 Bowman baseball. As he mentioned, you can go over to his site, prospectpulsev1.com, sign up for a 7-day free trial. Go check out the site. There's all kinds of cool features on there to help you with your Bowman card collecting. And then make sure you go over to prospect-analytics.com. I have all my ranking articles out. I also have added a header at the top of the website so that it's easier to find. There's now a section called 2026 Bowman. It will have my hitters ranking article, my pitcher ranking article, my PYT rankings, my overview, my cheat sheet, everything you need for 2026 Bowman baseball. So make sure you go over again to prospect-analytics.com and check that out. And thank you again for listening to the Prospect Analytics Podcast.